Hello.
Hello. Hi.
It's Books at Lunchtime.
It is. You're looking very festive in there.
I spent some time this morning putting some lights up. I thought it was that time of year. I ought to make an effort.
'Tis the season.
Tis the season. 'Tis the season for great books.
It is, which is why we're super excited to say good morning to Natasha Pulley. Good morning, Natasha.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. How are you? I'm really aware that I've made no Christmas effort whatsoever. I'm really dull.
Not at all. I think probably we'll have to, when the Christmas season ends, we'll have to just edit us out, and then you'll be, you know, able to carry the conversation long past the point where Christmas lights are de rigueur. So it's good.
Okay, cool. So I'll just be careful not to mention Christmas or any other like chronological festivals, and then this can go out whenever.
Perennial content, yeah, absolutely. Evergreen.
Natasha,
So,
we're huge fans of your books in our shop, and yours was one of the very early author events that we had, and we got a book in sort of unknown, and it was this one. And I just walked around the shop carrying this because I just loved the cover and I loved how it felt. And I just walked around with it just in my arms, and I didn't read it. Yes, I was stroking it, and I was loving it, and I was showing it to people. I was doing this. And I was just loving it as a product. And then I went to Topping Books in Ely, and I saw that you had just been there. So I said, how is that? And they said, she's great. So we immediately organized for you to come for a visit. And it had gone into out of print, and I couldn't get any paperbacks. So I spent sort of the next 9 months saying, she's coming and you can't read her book. But it's great. So word of mouth.
Print run quite fast, yeah.
Yes, you've been a huge success here. So tell us about your books, please.
No problem. So far there are 3 books out. They're called The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, The Bedlam Stacks, and The Lost Future of Pepperharrow. They've all got quite strange titles. They're all basically related. The same character crops up in all 3. The middle one is kind of weird, and it's set in Peru. But the final one comes back to the world of the first one. The final one was released in March, so just before lockdown. It's still out in a very, very beautiful hardback, if you would be interested in looking at the hardback.
we just like stroking, don't we?
I know, they're very strokable books. They feel nice. They all follow a Japanese watchmaker called Keita Mori, who can remember the future. And it's all about the problems and the interesting kind of psychological difficulties that ensue when you lead this kind of peculiar life. Mainly the books are narrated by a man who rents a room from him, Nathaniel Steepleton. He's a telegraphist, or he starts out as a telegraphist at the Home Office and becomes a translator at the Foreign Office after he's learned Japanese from Mori, who is quite strange and quite exacting. They end up having a stint in Japan at the British legation there. The final book is all about what happens when people in Tokyo start seeing ghosts.
And which book is that one in?
That's The Lost Future of Pepperharrow.
Right.
It's all about Victorian theories of electricity, Nikola Tesla, the bizarre experiments that went on, and what the world would look like if some of those theories were actually true.
There's just so much to get into here, Natasha, but I've got to just ask you, first of all, how on earth do you conjure this world? What kind of research goes into the way that you've connected this kind of sci-fi thing with this kind of Victorian landscape that you write so well?
Okay, so I think something that sheds light on everything that I write is a very weird and early job that I had when I was in my really early 20s. I used to work for Cambridge University Press, and I worked for the maths and science departments at the press. So I was always editing like astronomy books, or helping to edit astronomy books. I was very far down the ladder. But one of the things that I did on the side was a project where the press was reprinting Victorian scientific monographs, and it was my job to blurb them. So I had to read them. They always said, oh, you know, read 3 chapters, and I was very scientifically insecure, so I would read the whole thing and then write a blurb about them. And I must have done this for, oh God, 30 or 40 Victorian monographs, and some of the science that comes up in them is just nuts and brilliant and mind-blowingly wrong. And one of the things that I absolutely love is that when you read into the history of science, you can date your own scientific understanding. And I realized that I don't understand anything that has been developed since quantum mechanics. So basically since 1905, and Einstein said, right, this is how the world works, guys. I'm just like, nope, no idea, but I do understand the Victorian scientists, even though they were wrong. So what I tended to do was, because these ideas were so just, they were kind of naturally fantastical anyway, but they made so much sense with regard to the mathematics and the physics that was available to these people at the time. I just started nicking them. I was like, these are going to go in books. It's hilarious. What if this were true? And I think that's one of the questions that novels always ask. What if this were true? And so that was just something that I stole from 19th century scientists, but I've just kept doing it because there is an endless supply of stuff.
That really rings true, because I was thinking this morning about how I would characterize them. They are historical. They're not magic because they're science. They're kind of, we know now that they aren't, but when you look back to the time it was, and that's why it's believable, and it's written as science and engineering as well. And so because it's in those terms, it's very believable.
Well, the other thing that I feel really strongly about historical fiction is, you know, not only should it be kind of interesting and accurate, but one of the things that it really should do is not look back and sneer. It's very easy for us now to look back at 19th century physicists and say, oh, of course it's ridiculous to believe in mediums and the ether and, you know, souls zooming around and ghosts and stuff like that. But according to the physics and the maths available to them at the time, these theories seemed absolutely legitimate. And I think it's a really important historical exercise to do, to go back and say, well, let's imagine this world as if it were true, because this is how people at the time would have seen the world. These were the physical laws available to them, the discoveries that had been made. The things that disproved them were 60 years distant yet. So it's just kind of, I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge that this is what the world looked like to a lot of these people at the time. And of course it reads like the most ludicrous fiction now, and people call it magic realism, but it is an imagining of the world as it really would have looked like if you honestly believe the science at the time.
But it's not just the science and the engineering from the time. When I read, sorry about the background noise, when I read the Bedlam stacks, and I read about the trees and the blue stones and the water, it was probably the first time I really stopped reading a book to go and do my own investigation on the place, because I probably would have walked away from my life to go there and live there. It was just so clean and pure and distant and different and wonderful and possible, but in the past. And I was deeply disappointed that it's not real.
So sorry about that. It was all, so essentially all of the Bedlam stacks. So for anyone who hasn't read it, this is a book that's set in Peru, and it's kind of weird, and I'm kind of uneasy about it because it's a colonial story about a very rich guy who goes to kind of steal resources in the Amazon, which is in many ways not okay. But what he finds there is a world that is very, very informed by real Peruvian creation stories and real Peruvian myths. I used to live in Peru, so these were told to me all the time. And one of the stories that they have, and that crops up again and again, and actually is in their creation story, the Inca creation story of the world, is that people can turn to stone. And so I think in the way of a mathematical proof, you say, okay, if this is true, what else must also be true in order for this to have happened? And so if you work backwards from that, what you get is kind of what I came up with in Bedlam. It's just it's a very boring logical process. There's very little imagination involved. It is just, right, okay, well, if this is true, then what else must also be true? And what I ended up with was like towers of glass and wood that floats in air and kind of floating cities and this kind of thing.
And pollen.
and pollen that glows in the dark, and it's all of that is related to real things that are very much historically accurate in Peru, like writing on knot strings, the myth of stone, the myth of El Dorado, everything like that.
So also, I mean, I accept what you say about the mathematical proof, and if this is true, then that is, and working from where they were at the time. But my gosh, how much vision have you actually got? Because the two, so sticking with the first and the third books, because Mori is in the second one, isn't he? But only for about a line.
About 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to read the second one in order to read the first and the third. So they cover so much ground individually. But the third one, the Lost Future of Pepperharrow being rather a sequel to Watchmaker. You know where this was the whole time?
Yeah, sort of. So when I was writing Watchmaker, I had the second book in mind. It was very unformed, but it was there, definitely.
That's astonishing.
I really don't think it is, because I think there's a kind of the publishing timescale is very, very long, which means that you can write a book when you're sort of 22, 23. It's not published till you're 26. You write something else and then you come back and you write a sequel when you're 30. So it looks like 10 years have gone by, but actually it's all the same idea that you had it originally. So it looks like you've done this amazing magic trick, and it's all rubbish, I promise. But
you do work well ahead, don't you? You're a very hard worker, because when you visited the shop in the past, you said that the next book is done and you're working on the one after that. So I know that you've got a new book coming out now.
Yes, I'm so excited about this one, because I think of all of them that I've done so far, I'm most proud of the book that's going to come out in May 2021. It's really different from the others. It's called The Kingdoms, and rather than a kind of fantastical magical history, it's alternate history, and it's all about what might have happened if Britain had lost the Napoleonic Wars. And I know that sounds like really geeky, and really kind of overly specific, but I got reading a lot of stuff by people like Robert Harris and C.J. Sampson, books like Fatherland and Dominion and SSGB, and they're all alternative histories about what would have happened if Germany had won World War II. And one of the things that I started thinking about was, well, mate, there are other wars that we could have lost, and this could have been kind of even worse. And I think the Napoleonic Wars is that. And we have so many relics of it in our culture now that we often don't even think about. Like Trafalgar Square is Trafalgar Square because we won the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Nelson is celebrated because he won that battle. And we are not speaking French right now because he won that battle. And so this is all about what would happen if we had lost.
But it's still not entirely a straight story. It's still clearly by Natasha Pulley, isn't it?
Yes, and there is lots of kind of timey-wimey strangeness, and it's a really difficult plot to summarize, and I even struggled to do it when I was pitching it to my agent, and after a while she went, "What?" But what I'm really hoping is that this is a symptom of the fact that the novel needs to be as long as it is, because I literally can't explain what's going on in fewer words than are in the novel.
Well, I'm very, very lucky. I have the best job in the world, and I'm a very lucky girl. I have been given a digital proof, so I've had a first glimpse of this, and I'm hugely enjoying it. So I very much hope you'll come back and talk to us when our readers have had a chance to have a look at it. It is really good, and what was I going to say? And there's a mystery, a twist that I still haven't got as far as, because it's not revealing anything to say that on page 1, the main character turns up and he has a kind of amnesia. He doesn't know who he is. I'm 60% of the way through. I still don't know who he is. So
You'll find out. All is revealed.
I have every confidence. Yes, excellent. Natasha, what else do you read? If someone like me is able to say, I've read everything she's written, what else do you recommend that they might enjoy?
So I mean, I'm always writing from a solid basis of Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. anyone who likes my stuff should absolutely go away and read them. I really, really believe that very serious things are best dealt with comedy. I think that's a really important writing lesson to have, and it just makes everything more fun. What I'm reading at the moment, I'm on a real Russian sci-fi kick. I really love it. So what I'm reading at the moment is a really lovely short novel, which you can read in an afternoon if you just kind of, if you're at a loose end, read it with a glass of wine. It's just brilliant. It's called Roadside Picnic, and it's by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. They are really, really brilliant Russian sci-fi writers. They survived things like the siege of Leningrad, and then they went into military service, and then they were English and Japanese translators for the military for a long time. So they have this amazing life experience that they draw on, and they write bonkers sci-fi novels that are just great, and the translations into English are fantastic. So I think but Roadside Picnic is their most famous one, and I just hadn't got to it till now. The other one that I really, really like is called We, or Moi, by Yevgeny Zamyatin. And this is the book that George Orwell drew on a lot when he wrote 1984. I think loads and loads of people, when they think about George Orwell, when they read George Orwell, they're often aware that he was very, very interested in what was going on in the Soviet Union. But often poor old Yevgeny Zamyatin doesn't get a mention. He wrote this wonderful novel, We. It's a dystopia. And he wrote it in the 1920s, kind of, so just as kind of Stalinism was really kicking off. And it's very, very clever. And it's all about a world where Stalinism has lasted for 1,000 years. So it's 1984, but on acid. So it's huge fun. Definitely have a look at that. So I'm very much on Russian science fiction at the moment, but I really love reading non-fiction as well. And I've just finished a fantastic one called The Wisdom of the Ancients by Neil Oliver, the archaeologist. I just listened to it on an audiobook, and he reads it himself. He's got the most glorious voice. He's Scottish, and it's great. And I notice he alliterates a lot as well, so it sounds like poetry. It's just really good, and it's all about kind of investigating deep history, so Neolithic stuff, who built Stonehenge, pyramids, why, all kinds of art in caves from species of humans that kind of very much predate Homo sapiens. It's kind of the deep history stuff that I don't really know about, but I definitely wanted to find out about, and I really like. So obviously I write historical fiction, but it's very close historical fiction. The furthest I'm likely to go back is sort of 1600. This is sort of 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. So it's just fascinating. And I love science books as well, as you can imagine. I'm about to read Entangled Worlds, and I can't remember the name of the writer, but it's all about fungi. It seems really interesting. And I also recently read Why We Sleep by Matthew Goodman. That was a brilliant one, because I don't sleep often. So I was very interested in why that is.
It's wonderful how everything you read just gets put into the cauldron, doesn't it? And I can totally see us, a couple of your books down the line, reading, going, yes, something about fungi. We were there when Natasha was talking about that. I mean, there's so much. I mean, as you were talking, I was just making a note, and I think what I find really interesting about, and really beguiling actually, about your particular worlds that you create is it's that sort of tipping point between where everything was slightly mystical and then everything was explained, and it's that hinge where you kind of can allow this kind of crazy stuff to happen because it wasn't explained away quite yet, as you've just said. So I just love the idea that all of these things, the little fungi and all these other things about sleep, you're going to find a way to spin that in a really interesting way.
Much. I mean, it's all left. Like, honestly, if you steal from one thing, it's plagiarism. If you steal from 50 things, it's research. But it's just, I think so much of writing is about finding the stuff in history and in science and in subjects that are not yours, and go, oh, that's brilliant, and you just take it, and it's the shiny stuff. And I think writers are magpies, like we really do just collect all the shiny things. So I think it's just I especially love reading non-fiction because it's just all that, it's often stuff that hasn't sort of permeated into fiction yet. So it's really, really fun to find all the shiny things. So I'm sure I will write something about fungi, and I'm sure I will absolutely be writing something about Russian nuclear physics, and like all the odd stuff that hasn't filtered through yet, because it's just so rich and brilliant.
As Tracy always. I don't want to step on Tracy's conversational.
No,
so
sorry, this is waiting for it. No, it's just the absolute thirst for learning just really resonates, and that's what one thing we love about being in the bookshop, that we're always able to come across something new that we didn't know, and it's just a joy. And I think that that's one of the things that comes through really strongly in your writing, that you have pulled all these things together from all of your experiences, and you just do really, really enjoy knowing and learning and writing it.
I really enjoy knowing. It's so exciting. And I think, again, it's one of the reasons I love historical fiction, because I think this is a genre where often readers come to it with maybe not an expectation, but certainly a hope that they'll find out something that is true that they didn't know before. And I think that's that's one of the most brilliant feelings you can get from a book. And so that's really, really what I try and do.
Excellent. I would love for you to tell us that you've had your own kind of time slip experience, because that seems to keep happening in all your books. That's actual experience, but I'm guessing.
I wish. I just don't have one of those brains. I feel like there's a type of person that happens to, and they're sort of open and bright and I've got like a very clockwork brain. And I think if it did happen to me, I'd be like, no, I can explain that. Bye. Like, it would be wasted on me. But I live in hope.
Excellent. Well, we really, really have enjoyed talking to you this morning, lunchtime. And, you are always welcome to come and talk about all of your books and the Kingdoms. When that comes out, we will be walking around the shop holding that and stroking it and telling people.
Yeah. Good stuff. Honestly, I'll be around there like a shot. As soon as all the COVID restrictions lift, I'm with you.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, we cannot wait to see you again, and I know all our readers would really enjoy that as well.
Brilliant. I can't wait.
Okay, super. All right, thank you again, Natasha.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.